When scientists first discovered hydrothermal vents in 1977, the vents themselves were not the biggest surprise. The animals were. Thousands of meters beneath the Pacific Ocean, in complete darkness, researchers encountered dense communities of life unlike anything they had expected to find. Among the crabs, mussels, and shrimp stood enormous red-plumed structures rising from the seafloor like strange underwater forests. At first glance, they looked almost like exotic plants. They were animals. Today, these organisms are known as giant tube worms, among the most remarkable animals ever discovered. Some individuals can exceed 2 meters in length, making them among the largest worm-like animals on Earth. Yet what makes them truly extraordinary is not their size. It is what they lack. Adult giant tube worms have no mouth, no stomach, no intestines, no digestive system at all. For most animals, this would be impossible. Every ecosystem requires a way to capture energy and convert it into the materials needed for growth and survival. Animals typically achieve this by consuming food and digesting it internally. Giant tube worms took a different evolutionary path. To understand how, it helps to remember the environment in which they live. Hydrothermal vents form where seawater penetrates cracks in Earth's crust, becomes heated by magma below, and returns to the seafloor carrying dissolved minerals and chemical compounds. The vent fluids contain substances that would be toxic to many forms of life, including hydrogen sulfide, the compound responsible for the smell of rotten eggs. For giant tube worms, however, hydrogen sulfide is not a problem. It is the foundation of their survival. Inside each tube worm is a specialized organ known as a trophosome. Rather than containing digestive tissues, the trophosome houses billions of symbiotic bacteria. These microorganisms perform chemosynthesis, obtaining energy from chemical reactions involving compounds released by the vents. In many ways, these bacteria play a role similar to that of plants in a forest. They capture energy and convert it into organic compounds that support life. The tube worms provide the bacteria with a stable home and a steady supply of chemicals gathered from the surrounding water. In return, the bacteria produce nutrients that feed the worm. Neither organism survives in quite the same way without the other. The partnership is so complete that adult tube worms no longer possess the digestive structures that their distant ancestors once had. Evolution effectively outsourced digestion to an entirely different organism. The bright red plume extending from the top of the worm plays a critical role in this relationship. The plume functions much like a gill, absorbing oxygen, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide from the surrounding water. Specialized molecules in the worm's blood transport these substances throughout the body and deliver them to the bacterial community living within the trophosome. One of the challenges is that oxygen and hydrogen sulfide are normally a dangerous combination. In most animals, hydrogen sulfide interferes with cellular respiration and can be highly toxic. Giant tube worms have evolved specialized adaptations that allow them to transport both compounds simultaneously without poisoning themselves or their bacterial partners. It is a remarkable example of evolutionary innovation. The worms themselves are also surprisingly successful. Some studies suggest that giant tube worms can grow extraordinarily quickly, reaching impressive sizes in relatively short periods of time compared to many deep-sea animals. In an environment once assumed to be barren and energy poor, they form dense colonies that can dominate entire vent fields. Their discovery transformed our understanding of life in the deep ocean. Before hydrothermal vents were found, most scientists assumed that complex ecosystems ultimately depended on sunlight. Giant tube worms became one of the most visible examples that another possibility existed. Here was a large, complex animal thriving in complete darkness without ever eating a meal in the way we typically understand the term. Instead, it survived through cooperation. The worm gathered chemicals. The bacteria transformed those chemicals into food. Together, they occupied a niche that neither could have exploited alone. Today, giant tube worms remain among the most recognizable inhabitants of hydrothermal vent ecosystems. Their crimson plumes and towering white tubes have become icons of deep-sea exploration. Yet perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these animals is not their appearance. It is the reminder that evolution does not always solve problems by improving an existing design. Sometimes it solves them by forming a partnership so successful that an animal no longer needs a mouth at all.